Hi, this is Nick Util, and this is my Week 7 Diabetes Database Project, Part 3. Here I am proposing a diabetes registry database used for a diabetes registry. Here in SQL, we can enter information that patients have either written on forms or provided to us in tables. We can have tables for demographics where each person in the registry will have their own unique patient ID. No two people will have the same patient ID in the database, and we can collect some demographics information from them, including their first name, last name, their age, gender, race, and also date of birth. And if necessary, we can also collect more demographics information as needed, and we can add columns to this table. Next, other information that we may like to collect from their actual primary care visits or visits for the diabetes registry. Their height, their weight, so we can get their BMI, as well as their systolic and their diastolic blood pressure as well. And as I said before, we can also add columns in this table as necessary. And again, this is our vital signs table. Lastly, we have our lab results table. In our lab results table, we can have the ID for the test that was performed on their blood. The test ID will also be unique for each patient. Their visit ID, so if a patient comes in more than once, they will have multiple visit IDs for one patient ID. We can have their draw date, if they were fasting or non-fasting for their glucose test, their actual glucose values, as well as their A1C. And additionally, we can add more blood tests here if needed. This table gives us great information on some of the vital signs of their patients and also provides us with the A1C percent for each of the patient that comes in for the registry. Now, with these three different tables, we are able to link them through the patient ID. So if we do want to look at certain patients, maybe their gender or their demographics, their height or their weight in relation to their A1C percent, we can certainly do that. I have a couple examples of some views that we can also look at as well, that we can do through SQL. We can look at the patient ID, the gender, their age, as well as their A1C percent. We can start to compare A1Cs between males and females. As you can see here, we can calculate the average, min, max per gender for the A1C, and we can also provide a lot more functions of the A1C as well if necessary. And also we can look at A1Cs that are higher or lower than a certain number threshold that we might provide. For example, here we programmed the system to tell us what patients did have A1Cs above 6.5. So I think that using MySQL to be able to use this information for our diabetes registry would be a great tool, and I think it would allow us the ability to gather information from many different individuals, and we can learn a little more about the patterns that we can see with their A1Cs, and to look and see if people are pre-diabetic to diabetic, and look if there are any other patterns in relation to potentially some of their other vital signs as well. So within this database, we likely will have multiple users who will be using this database either as database administrators, maybe data entry individuals, individuals that are just read-only. So this is an option that we can program into the database. So we can allow certain users to have certain privileges based on what we would like to see. So I have a couple examples of some users that we have programmed that have certain privileges in the database. First, we have our administrator, who does have all rights and privileges to the diabetes registry database. We have another user who has the ability to only back up the database and doesn't have any other privileges to perform data entry or read any of the information in the database. Our next individual can, for example, have the ability to edit, enter, or update any of the data in the database registry. So this would be an example of maybe a nurse or someone who is taking maybe some of these written or computer forms and entering them into the database so that it can be updated. So here's an example of someone that we gave specific privileges to insert, select, or update the tables that we have in the database. And another view that we can have as well is someone that has a read-only view. So there were a couple views that I provided to you earlier showing and comparing A1Cs by gender and looking at the average, min, and max. And we also can program a user to have privileges to just look at those views. So this would be a read-only view where they cannot look at any of the other data and do not have the ability to update any of that data. And I think that's very important to only give certain users the ability to update the data so that we can try and keep this data as clear as possible and make sure that there are no errors every time someone does enter the database. So yes, in summary, this is my diabetes registry database. I hope that this presentation allowed you to see what MySQL can do for a potential diabetes registry database, and that hopefully in the future we will be able to use this program to make a comprehensive database for a diabetes registry. Thank you.